Hello everybody, Roger here again. I'm at Rauhala, my family's heritage farm, and I'm going to be taking some friends up on a hike into the upper forests of Rauhala, way up that way. And we're going to go up the Cat Road and check out just how big Rauhala is and check up the upper forest. So let's go and check out the forests of Rauhala. So if you're new to my YouTube channel, I'm Roger Langfist. I'm from Malcolm Island, the town of Rauhala. My ancestors were the people who founded the town, among the people who founded the town over 125 years ago. And I do history videos, local history videos, and I also go out and explore neat, out-of-the-way places and check out new things. So that's what my channel's all about. If you want to learn about the local history, just follow along and we'll talk about things whenever I make new videos. I just got back from my trip to Victoria a few days ago and I got a little bit of a cold, so don't mind my stuffed up nose. It's a little red from me blowing my nose so much, but I'm sure this video will turn out fine in the end. And I'm going to go on this hike with my friend Dakota from Abbotsford and his girlfriend and their dog. So from the cabins at Rauhala, we're going to head along here to the eastern border of Rauhala, that borders in Ogma, or Old Growth Management Area. And we're going to be following Peggy's Trail, which is the horse and buggy trail that Collie Sallow, who used to homestead past Rauhala, he had a horse named Peggy. And I have a whole video all about Peggy's Trail, so if you want to go check that out, if you haven't seen it already, look through my YouTube videos. Anyways, we're going to be heading down the hillside here to the eastern boundary of Rauhala and heading out past. And then once we go down Peggy's Trail, we're going to head up the Cat Road. And the Cat is short for Caterpillar, which is a bulldozer-looking machine. And this is from the 1930s when Malcolm Island had a logging camp here, just past Rauhala. And we're approaching the eastern boundary of Rauhala. Along the beach front is where the horse and buggy trail goes, and that's what we're going to be following into the forest for a little ways before we head up into the Cat Road, going up into the upper portion of the property. Horse and buggy trail goes off this way, and I'm just pointing out my little sign I made years ago. That's not the correct spelling of Rauhala. I made that sign way back when I didn't know the correct spelling. But if we go this way, which is where we're going to be going, we're going to follow Peggy's Trail along the beach. And I can't keep going without showing you this first. This is an old coal mining shaft, and it goes down 100 meters, so it's pretty deep. And this was dug in 1906. It's the first one that was put on Malcolm Island, and they were doing a test hole for coal. And again, I have a whole video just on this subject, so if you want to check through my YouTube channel, you will find it. So we are following Peggy's Trail along the beach past Rauhala. And there's a few things along the way here that I got to point out. I'll show you when we get to them. But you can see here the old horse and buggy trail. It's pretty clear to see it in some of the areas as we go through here. But if we were to carry on past the Cat Road, we would be heading off to 6 other old homesteads that have been reclaimed by the forest. One of them is Moura's. And again, I have a whole video just on Moura and who Moura was, so you'll have to comb through my YouTube channel to go take a look at that. Up in this area here, just above Peggy's Trail, all this flat area in here was once a logging camp, and that's what I'm going to be showing you next is some remnants of the old cat that built the Cat Road that we're going to be following up to get up to the upper portions of the forest of Rauhala. So at one time there was a logging camp here called Malcolm Island Logging Company, and in the 1930s there was a fire that burnt the logging camp down, And then they moved to the site where the town of Port McNeill currently is, in around 1936 or 1937 or something like that. And then later on, the town, or that logging camp was called Pioneer, and later on became the town of Port McNeill. So up in here, if I go up into the forest here we go. Here's a first piece of the old cat, reclaimed by the forest. And if I walk just a little ways up here, off of the trail, the horse and buggy trail, you'll see the remnants of the old cat that built the cat road that we're about to go up. And again, this machine goes back to the 1930s. All through this flat area here is where the logging camp once was. And that is my friend Dakota's dog. Its name is Luna. And they're following me along on this adventure as we go along and explore the cat roads going up into the upper forest. Here you can see the tread. And down there is Peggy's Trail. If I were to follow Peggy's Trail out past the cat road, we would again get out to Moeris. We're not going out to Moeris. We are following the cat road, and you can see through here how this big trail is dredged out in the forest. And going up through here is the cat road that we're going to be following up. Now along the way, if you look right and left throughout the cat road here, you'll see these little shrines that I've put out into the forest. And this one is a shrine to the god of beer and television, the great internet. As we're going along here, you're going to see remnants of the first logging, and you'll see just how big the trees once were and how far apart they were spaced. Here, that big dredged area there, you can see is the cat road. And again, you'll see little shrines here and there along the trail that I left. This typewriter used to belong to Hans Minty, who was once the manager of the Sontala Co-op store. Now, I used to do winter maintenance through here every year, but I've gotten so busy lately that I haven't had a chance to. So there's going to be a few windfalls along the way. And one thing I'm going to point out is you can see there's these boards going along the road here, and that's punch-in. And it would just give traction in the wetter spots so that the cat could easily climb up here, especially when they're pulling loads out of the forest. Now about here, the road forks off into two directions. We're going to be taking the pathway off to the right. It's a little bushy and grown in. As you can see, at one time I had a bunch of signs pointing at sites of interest. You can see it sort of says giant tree. And we're going to be following up the pathway off to the right here to check out this large, still living cedar tree up in the forest of Rauhala. And just at the fork in the road is my shrine that I built a few years back to the 7 Hermetic Principles. And each one of these is a book inspired by Wacky Woods, which was a place near Courtenay where there were all these neat little quotes made out of wood that you could open up and read in the forest. And I decided to make one for the 7 Hermetic Principles. Someone unfortunately came through here and vandalized it. And as you can see, it's going to get pretty bushy. Definitely have to find the time to come up here and do some winter maintenance because there's quite a few windfalls in this area. And my last video about Salal, Gulf area Shalon, here, I forgot the Finnish name for the nuisance bush, is what the Finns used to call this, Salal. And it's a Kiusenpuska, which is a derogatory word for bush, so thus they call this Salal. the nuisance bush. As you can see, it's quite thick and would be hard to walk through. One thing I used to do when I was a teenager, I used to pick salal, and this is a prime example of a branch that you would pick, as it's a nice, lovely, straight stem with nice flat leaves. And you would get a hand of these, and that they would get pressed by whoever you sell it to, and they would put these in floral arrangements because it's an evergreen. It doesn't lose its leaves. And salal is great here on Malcom Island because it's all second growth forests now. And you could see in the second growth forest, it grows nice and straight stems, which you could easily get a handful of salal. As you can see, the salal starts to take over and grow in, so if you don't do regular winter maintenance on the cat road, it'll grow in pretty fast. You can see here a tree that was fell a long time ago, and the stump of it right there. And it looks like we finally made it through all that mess, but we're still going, climbing up the cat road. Pretty quick here. I'm going to veer off into the forest and show you something pretty special. Now that we're out of the windfall area, you can see when the sun's out, it's quite beautiful in the upper forests of Rauhala as the sunlight's peering through the canopy of the forest. And we have here this giant red cedar, western red cedar, within the Ogma past Rauhala. If you walk around, following Luna around the tree here, in the back side of the tree, I've installed a shrine to the forest. As you can see here, the distance between the old stumps, that's the original forest, and in between is all the second growth trees that grew up since. And here we have this cedar tree that was burnt in a forest fire a very long time ago and hollowed out. We're going to see quite a few of them. Some of them date back to when the old logging camp burnt down. So up here, the two sides of the road merge again. And if we go back down this way, we'll end up back at Rauhala. But we are going to be going further up into the forest just to see how far Rauhala goes up into the forest. It's 100 acres. And here's another one of my shrines. Rusty. Open her up. That's a quote written in runes. And here's another example of the puncheon that goes crisscrossing along the road here. moss going along the cat road is nice and squishy and soft. It's really quite nice to go through here barefoot, but I'm not going to. First logging, you could see these notches dug into the tree. Those are springboard holes. So they would have this board that the person would sit on or stand on this board, and they would go back and forth bouncing on this springboard with this very long saw to cut down the tree, way back before power saws existed. Back in the day when the first logging happened on Malcolm Island, they only wanted to pick the prime, best of the best trees. So through here you're going to see some nice big old growth trees. And Luna is loving this trail. The cat road keeps going and going and going. And here we have some frog eggs. I just passed a frog a little ways away, a brown frog, but he got away from me. But this is that bundle, that jelly thing there is frog eggs. And you see this tree here with those gnarly branches. It is infected with a parasite called mistletoe, and as the spores explode, it'll infect the branches going up the tree, and it'll eventually kill the entire tree. Here's some more signs of the old forest fire that went through here a long time ago. And then when we get up to the canyon, there's this old fallen bridge. I put a sign here a long time ago. Use at your own risk for anyone visiting Rauhala that cared to go for a hike up through our upper forests. This bridge once went across the canyon. We'll be following the canyon back on our way back to Rauhala, but we're on Rauhala right now. But we're going to be going up here to the very tippy top of Rauhala. So we have to get across this old bridge. And when you get up past the canyon over the bridge, it's all nice and dry and flat, and the road is pretty much drivable still. However, we can't get vehicles up this way. But we're going to go first up to the very top corner of Rauhala. And then we're going to come back down this way and veer off that way. And I'll show you going across Rauhala. But first, let's go up to the upper corner. You can see the upper cat road is nice and flat and pretty solid. You could drive a car or a truck on this with no problem. Probably more a truck than a car. Now I'm approaching the northeasternmost corner of Rauhala, way up in the upper forest. If you were to look at a satellite map of Rauhala, you would see this big giant rectangular dark patch of trees, and that entire thing would span the boundaries of Rauhala. I put these signs here a long time ago when I was hosting a LARP event on Rauhala, a live action role-playing game. That was intended to tell everyone it's time to turn back. And the property does go a little bit further into the forest there. If you were to carry on following the Cat Road, it would eventually hook up to the Mitchell Bay Road. And there's one cool feature just off here into the forest there. You could see this giant windfall going all through there. We'll go check that out before we head back. If I had something like the dog here, for scale. You can see just how big this windfall is, and it fell a very long time ago. This cedar tree, and if you were to cut this open, there would be really good wood still inside this tree. We finally found one. This is a gnome plant, and they flourish up in the upper forests of Rauhala. And I'll put my finger there for scale. It's this beautiful pink flower that comes out of the moss. And we are heading back down the cat road to that junction just past the bridge there. We're going to follow that across the expanse of Rauhala. I'm going to show you some cool things. All right, if we were to carry on down that way, that's where we came from, across the canyon, over the bridge. Now we're going to go down this way. And here we have a deer shed. The deer naturally shed their antlers every year. You can see it just rubbed off or fell off. And as you can see, the upper cat road of Rauhala is quite beautiful, with the sun peering through the canopy and the wind. Makes for a beautiful setting. And here we have a cluster of gnome plants. You can see there's a pale white one here and a big cluster of pink. Here's another great big gnome plant growing out of the cat road. And as we're crossing the cat road going across the property, we come to another fork in the road. We're going to carry on down this upper cat road, which will eventually link us back down to this one through the forest, and we'll be coming back this way and walking the canyon back. But for now, we're heading this way. And there's a piece of old scrap metal from the logging equipment way up in the upper forest of Rauhala. And we're still crossing the cat road going across Rauhala. If I were to follow this all the way through the forest, it would carry on and eventually link up to the back end of my uncle's property along Cleva Road. I've never actually done it before. It's pretty overgrown. I've only cleared out the area where the cat road is on Rauhala's. So we come to where the cat road gets overgrown. That's leaving the boundaries of Rauhala on the western edge. And we're going to cut down through the forest here, and I'm going to show you something really cool. And then we're going to loop back to the lower cat road. And I'm approaching it now. And what you are looking at here are some old growth stumps from the first logging. Giant trees. And this giant, enormous boulder here called an erratic. And what it is, it was once possibly part of a mountain on either Vancouver Island, most likely though the mainland of North America. And it got caught up in the glaciers during the last ice age. And Malcolm Island is a glacial ice age formation, which is mostly glacial till. And it, as the glaciers melted, it left this giant boulder here. And as you can see, a long time ago, the boulder split open. There's this huge crack in it. And it's pretty big. So I'm just going to back up to get a better view of it for scale. And we'll walk up to it to take a sneak peek at the crack here. goes through this erratic in our forest. And the loggers, a long time ago, there were some giant trees growing on top of this Ice Age erratic, and the loggers cut them down, unfortunately, a very long time ago. And again, you could see some of the old springboard stumps from the original logging scattered about throughout the forests of Rauhala, what the old forest once looked like. Fortunately, in the early 2000s, a couple people came through here and did some shake blocking throughout the upper portions of Rauhala and took a lot of our old growth trees that were fallen in the forest. And here is a nice big fungus. If I put my fist here, you'll see just how big it is. Now people knock these off, dry them out, and then that's a nice face, the white underside, to paint sceneries on. All right, we're back on the lower cat road here. You can see my old sign someone tore down. And we're going to carry on back this way, do a little bit of backtracking, and then we're going to go down the canyon, and I'm going to talk more about that when we get there. Here you can see some nice vibrant pink gnome plants and some nice pale white ones. In the upper cat road of the forest of Rauhala, you could see how no windfalls or very few windfalls are crossing the road, and it's nice and solid ground here, so you can drive on this road still. We're almost back at the bridge, but we're not going to follow back down the cat road where we came from. We're going to veer off into the woods here, and we're going to follow the canyon, and I'm going to talk more about that when we get down to the canyon. And off to my left here, you can see another giant windfall. And again, some springboard holes notched into some old stumps. But that's not the main thing that I'm trying to show you. Just a short ways in here, on the edge of the upper portion of the canyon, is this giant Ice Age erratic, another erratic in the upper forests of Rauhala. And again, these are left over from the last Ice Age when the glaciers came in here and deposited these enormous rocks that were swept up in the ice sheets. And this was left behind. And now I am approaching the canyon. And as you can see why we call it the canyon, it goes way down there. Now how this formed was during the meltdown of the glaciers that formed Alcasar and Mount Island. There would have probably been like a glacial lake on top of the glacier here, and it melted the ice rapidly. And all this rushing water would have came through here, carving away the landscape, finding its easiest path down to the ocean. And now, this is where the forest drains all of the rainwater, and this is where the creek of Rauhala begins and winds all the way through the canyon on its way down to the ocean. And the creek at Rauhala was called the Rauhala Pero, which means the place of Peace's Creek. So we're just going to climb down to the water's edge of the creek here, and then work our way along on our way back to the fields of Rauhala. And as you can see, Dakota is way up at the top of the canyon. And I'm way down here where the creek is. here you could see a log that the original loggers, the first loggers, logged a very long time ago, but they couldn't get it up out of the creek, so they had to leave it here. Here's a good vantage point, but videos and pictures don't always do it justice, but you could see the slant of the canyon going up there. There's an old stump from the first logging, and we're down at the creek. And the further down we go, the deeper and deeper the canyon gets. Way up there is the upper edge. And you can see this big slope coming down where the creek is. It's starting to get pretty late, so while we still have some daylight, we're going to climb back up the canyon here up to the very top up there and head our way back to the fields of Rauhala, where our camp is. Way down there is the creek. We're at the other side of the canyon now. And now, as we're walking the forest here, we're going through the second growth timber on our way back down slope to the fields. And here is a yarding corridor where at one time they pulled the trees that they logged up in the canyon down through here. And just ahead of me where you see the light coming through the trees, that's one of our roads that goes to the fields at Rauhala. So we're almost back. And here we are, back at the road. One thing I want to point out, since I'm in the area just off the road where we came out of the forest, down in this little pit here is a freshwater spring. All right, I'm just about at the fields at Rauhala here again. So this concludes our little walking tour, hike up through the upper forests of Rauhala, going up the Cat Road. And if you want to come along on one of my little tours and explore Rauhala with me, get in touch through my YouTube channel if you're in the area and you want to come on one of my tours. Other than that, you could keep following along my video series. And if you want to like, share, and subscribe, I'd greatly appreciate that. So don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And I will see you all in the next video. All right, ciao. And here we are, back at Rauhala. Well, we were on Rauhala the entire time, but we're back in the fields.